Hi, welcome to Flash Instruction. We're going to use a technique of frame by frame animation to create what I'm calling a free runner. So when we're done, we'll have something similar to this. Whoops, I didn't mean to maximize it. So you can see that this guy is just running. It's not finished yet, but he starts here. He runs, he jumps over this, he flips over that. He'll eventually continue running down this way. So that's what we're going towards. We're going to start with a blank canvas and a blank project so you can see the process. The first process is that I made this area is called the stage. That's where all the action happens. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole stage. So this is the whole stage. It's okay to have stuff off the stage, but anything that's on the stage you'll see when you produce your movie. Down here is where all the properties are. Right now I don't have anything selected, so you're seeing the properties of the whole project. If I were to click, say, in a frame or something, you no longer see those properties. So whenever you want to see the properties of the stage in the document, you just click to the left here and those properties show up, and I can click here to recreate my yellow background. The next thing I did is I simply drew lines to do platforms, and this will turn my line thickness up a little bit. So now I can draw here, and similar to other programs, if you hold the shift key when you're drawing lines, it will lock itself to being horizontal or vertical or 45 degrees. I'm going to undo that one because I don't want it. But holding down horizontal makes sure it gives me a horizontal thing. I also drew a vertical line about here, and I drew just a slanted one about there. So it's relatively similar. In frame by frame animation, it's possible to just keep a lot of stuff on one layer. It's not the best technique though, and it develops bad habits. So I want this to be the background layer, and I'm going to lock it. I'm not going to put anything else there because it keeps my project more organized. And later on, if I want to add something, nothing else is in the way. So I'm going to double click this word layer 1 and type the word background. And then I'm going to click lock so I don't accidentally draw on the background. To create a new layer, I click here. It says insert layer. This creates a folder. You don't really want to create layer folders at this point. And this is something else you might investigate later when you're doing tweening. So right now I just want to insert a layer. I'm going to name this man. Okay, so now I need to zoom back in because it's pretty hard working at that for a little guy. I'm actually going to zoom into it 200% and then just scroll around so I can see the top of my thing. Now, because of some of the things we're going to be doing, I am going to recommend that you use the pencil tool, which I hardly ever recommend, but it works adequately in Flash, especially because of one of the properties this has. So if I want a similar color, I come here to the pencil color. I'm going to choose a light green again. Yeah, that looks okay. And down here, it shows you what, like if I were to draw sort of try to draw a circle right now, it will force itself into a square based on how my mouse reacted. And I don't want that. So I'm going to undo those, and I'm going to come down to the pencil mode and turn it into smooth. Now when I do that, it makes my circles look a little more fluid. They're not perfect, but that's okay because the frame by frame goes so quickly. You don't really notice little flaws. But I am going to thin out my pencil. I think I'm going to go down. Let me see what 3 looks like. Yeah, I'm happy with 3. Okay, so I'm actually going to start my guy off stage. So I'm going to draw a little stick figure. You can see that even if I draw poorly, the lines smooth out for me, which is nice. So there's my first one that we're not even going to see. And you can see that I only have one frame up here. We now want to create another frame to do the next part of his movement. The easiest way to do that is to hit the F6 key. So that's what I'll be using throughout this project. You won't see me pressing it, but it's the best way to get a new keyframe. So I'm going to F6. You can see I have a new frame up here, and my background will grow with me. And I actually made a mistake. The F6 creates a keyframe, but also copies what I had in the previous keyframe so that my little man from the previous keyframe shows up, which isn't a problem the first time, because when I draw the second one, you're not going to see the first one anyway because he's off the screen. But if I were to do that again and draw the next version of him, you still see the previous one, and it's kind of laborious to have to erase old ones each time. But if you want to see, here's my animation so far. The better way, the alternative to making a keyframe, because you can see all that leftover stuff still here, is to create a blank keyframe. A blank keyframe will give you a brand new frame with nothing else there. You can do a blank keyframe by pressing the F7 key. So I'm going to be using the F7 key instead of the F6 key because in this particular project I don't want to see what was in the previous frame. So F7 creates me a new keyframe, but I can't see anything I did before, which actually makes it harder for me to guess where to put my dude. Let me undo this and show you something else. They have something built in called onion skinning. So if I click this onion skin, I can see shadows of the previous frame I built. So now it's easier to know where I should draw my next version, my next iteration. So I'm going to draw him here with his little arms. I'm going to hit F7 again. And I just keep drawing this little guy. So it's certainly not hard, but it can be pretty tedious. F7 gives me another blank keyframe. I see the onion skin of my previous one. And I just keep that process. I'm going to show you something else when we get to the end of this platform. And I'll also show you how to... Now it looks like he's crouching a little bit because he's about to jump. So what would make him more look like he's jumping, and I actually just realized I made a mistake, so let me undo that. I forgot to put a blank keyframe in. I could tell because both of these were dark green. So I'll hit F7 again. Now I know I'm in the right one. I'm going to make another tallish one again. And the next one I'm going to make look like he's crouching because he's about to jump. So F7, I'll make him shorter. I'm having trouble keeping his head perfectly round. Once I have him, if I could bend his body, it would look a little more realistic. Well, fortunately, my, Flash has that built in. If I switch to the selection tool, you can see that right now it's a normal selection. It's got a little dotted rectangle near the icon to show me that I'd be able to trace around something to select it. However, it also, and this only works if nothing is selected, so I clicked away to make sure nothing was selected. As I get my mouse pointer closer to my pieces, you can see that that one forms an arc. If I now pull my mouse out, it arcs that part. Unfortunately, it only arcs the bottom part because the arms kind of cut the line in two. So I'm going to undo to get rid of all of the arms, use my selection tool again, point close or on the line, pull it out, and that bends them. I can do that to the legs too to give it a little more of the illusion that he's jumping. I can now put the arms back in. I'm going to point the arms down because I think we typically tend to have our arms down when we're about to jump. I'm going to use the selection tool again and pull these down again. I know it looks kind of funny, but keep in mind we only see these frames briefly. If I F7, he's now going to be in the air. So I'm going to have his body stretched out again. Maybe his arms are going to be straight down. And when I F7 again, I can draw him down here. Maybe his arms are going to be up in the air now. and his legs are going to be a little more this way. I can keep bending him if I think that it's appropriate. So I can make his legs go a little bit like that. And maybe I even want to make his arms go a little bit like that. But I now have 11 frames of animation. There's a couple of ways to test this. One is to do what's called scrubbing, where I'm just dragging my mouse over the numbers on top of the timeline. It's kind of hard to see with the onion skinning turned on, so I'm going to turn off onion skin for a minute and do that animation again. But you can see it was a pretty simple thing. But you can also see that the bend right here is a very effective technique. Another way to see the animation is to just hit the enter key. The third way to do a preview is to do control enter. That actually opens its own box and it loops. So you can see this guy running and then getting back to the start and running. So for me to finish this animation, I just have to keep hitting the F7 key and turn on onion skinning so I can see the previous one, and just redraw the character each time. I might go, ah! And even though I made that arm really long, it's these little flaws, they don't really show up because the animation goes really fast. And sometimes it's kind of funny to see differences. So I want to bend this one up again. Okay, so F7 again. And you just repeat the process over and over. Some find it tedious, some find it really cool that they can easily make an animation without having to know too much, because I've just taught you how to do this in 12 minutes. So I'm going to do Control Enter one more time. Whoops. Control Enter, and that's how far I've gotten. So I would still have to go all the way around. Let me show you the version where it's kind of complete, because I want to show you what I did here. So if I scrub, you can see this version of it. So he jumped way over there. He landed with a bent body. Then he ran this way. Then I took several frames to have him flip over this wall. So scrubbing is a helpful way to preview because you can control how fast or slow you're watching it. And when you look at this one, which is a little bit further, it looks pretty cool. So that is how you can use frame by frame animation to make a pretty easy but simple cartoon.